Assalamu alaikum YouTube, this is Said Birza. In today's video, I wanted to look at the presentation of the two oceans in the Quran. Now, this video is based on my short book, Cosmology of the Quran, the Seven Skies and the Fixed Ground, which can be downloaded for free from millionairereason.com. Now, before we proceed, I wanted to bring your attention to the usage of pairs in the Quran. And from everything we created pairs, that you might take heed, chapter 51, verse 49. What I mean by pairs in the Quran is that the Quran frequently uses the sun and moon together in one statement, which are a pair. It uses male and female together in one statement, which are a pair. It uses the sky and the ground together in one statement, which are also a pair. Now, the Arabic word bahr is usually translated as ocean, sea, or large body of water. And translators usually flip-flop between what they mean when they translate the word bahr. But the Quran overwhelmingly uses the singular and dual forms of bahr. Whereas English has the singular and plural forms, Arabic has singular, dual, and plural forms. And the reason for this consistency in the Quran of only using the singular and dual forms of bahr will become evident as we proceed. The Quran speaks of two oceans, al-Bahrain, one salty and one sweet. While it is assumed that this means the salty oceans and the fresh rivers, which are more than two, it is just that, an assumption. God uses words precisely in the Quran, so what we are looking for are two large bodies of waters, two oceans. Let's look in the Quran. It is He who appointed the ground a settlement, and appointed in its midst rivers, and appointed for it anchors, and appointed between the two oceans a partition. Is there a God with God? No, but most of them do not know. Chapter 27, verse 61. And it is He who loosed the two oceans, this palatable sweet, and this salty bitter, and He appointed between them a barrier and a prohibiting prohibition. Chapter 25, verse 53. So after reading these two verses, we come to two questions. What are these two oceans, and what is the partition between them? Now let's look at the claims of science. Science claims that there are numerous rivers and oceans in the earth. When they say oceans, they are referring obviously to the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, Indian Ocean, etc. Similarly, for the rivers, they have the Amazon River, the Ganges River, the Nile River, etc. But what is the reality? The reality, according to the Quran, is that there is one salty ocean and one sweet ocean. And not equal are the two oceans, this palatable, sweet, and this salty, bitter. And from each you eat tender meat and extract adornments to wear. And you see the ships sailing in it, that you might seek of His bounty, and that you may be grateful. Chapter 35, verse 12. And you see the ships sailing in it. Sailing in what? Sailing in the salty ocean. So the salty ocean is one global ocean. It is one interconnected body of water. That is, the Amazon, Pacific, and Atlantic, and all these other oceans are actually just one ocean. They are all interconnected. Or more precisely, it is one salty ocean, and the ground has been placed on this ocean by God. So what is the sweet ocean? The sweet ocean is a massive underground reservoir. It is contained within the ground. It is accessible via lakes, springs, aquifers, and wells, and it is constantly being replenished by means of rain. Have we not appointed the ground a restrainer, living and dead? Chapter 77, verses 25 and 26. Now, I wanted to bring your attention to the water cycle, which you probably have been schooled in when you were a kid. And it goes something like this. The water cycle describes how water evaporates from the surface of the earth, rises into the atmosphere, cools and condenses into rain or snow in clouds, and falls again to the surface as precipitation. The water falling on land collects in rivers and lakes, soil and porous layers of rock, and much of it flows back into the oceans, where it will once more evaporate. That is a very nice and tidy explanation of how science claims things work, but this is not what the Quran is saying. In the creation of the skies and the ground, and the opposition of the night and the day, and the ship that moves in the ocean with what benefits mankind, and the water God sends down from the sky, therewith giving life to the ground after its death, and His scattering all creatures in it, and the turning about of the winds and the clouds subjected between the sky and the ground are signs for a people who use reason. Chapter 2, verse 164. Hast thou not observed how God sends down water from the sky, so the ground becomes green? God is the subtle, the aware. Chapter 22, verse 63. God is he who created the skies and the ground, and sent down water from the sky, wherewith he emerged fruits for your sustenance. And he subjected to you the ships to run upon the ocean by his command, and he subjected to you the rivers. Chapter 14, verse 32. The phrase, and the water God sends down from the sky, is not metaphorical, ladies and gentlemen. It is literal. God is literally sending down pure water from the sky. We have been so brainwashed by science that we fail to see and understand plain words written and repeated in front of us again and again in the Quran. So, what is the role of clouds? Let's look in the Quran. And it is he who sends the winds as glad tidings between his hands of mercy, until when it has picked up heavy clouds, we drive it to a dead ground and send down from it water. So we immerse from it all the fruits. Thus will we immerse the dead, that you might take heed. Chapter 7, verse 57. It is he who shows you the lightning as fear and hope, and produces the heavy clouds. Chapter 13, verse 12. And God is he who sends the winds, so it stirs up clouds. Then we drive it to a dead ground, and with it revive the ground after it is dead. Thus is the resurrection. Chapter 35, verse 9. Hast thou not observed how God drives the clouds, then joins them, then piles them? Then thou seest the rain issuing out of the midst of them, and he sends down coolness from the sky, from mountains in it. So he strikes with it whom he wills, and diverts it from whom he wills. The flash of his lightning almost takes away the sight. Chapter 24, verse 43. God is he who created the skies and the ground, and sent down water from the sky, wherewith he immersed fruits for your provision. And he subjected to you the ships to run upon the ocean by his command, and he subjected to you the rivers. Chapter 14, verse 32. God is he who sends the winds, so they stir up a cloud. So he spreads it in the sky, how he wills, and lumps it. Then thou seest the rain issuing from the midst of it, and when he causes it to fall upon whomsoever of his servants he wills, they rejoice. Chapter 30, verse 48. So the Quran's facts vis-a-vis science's claims. The sky is the ultimate source of fresh and pure water. The role of clouds is to modulate the flow of water coming down from the sky, and they can be bypassed altogether, which was done in the case of Noah's flood. Now, when we understand this point, that the sky is the ultimate source of fresh and pure water, and it is not the water cycle that is causing rain, we understand when God says, "And in the sky is your provision, and what you are promised." Chapter 51, verse 22. Say, who provides you from the sky and the ground, or who is master of hearing and sight, and who emerges the living from the dead, and emerges the dead from the living, and who arranges the command? Then they will say, God. Then say, will you not be God-fearing? Chapter 10, verse 31. Because it is he who shows you his signs, and sends down to you from the sky provision, but none remembers except he who turns in repentance. Chapter 40, verse 13. Have not the unbelievers observed that the skies and the ground were a mass sewn up, so we unstitched them, and we appointed from water every living thing? Will they not believe? Chapter 21, verse 30. So in summary, all life is created from water. We are created from sperm, which is mostly water, and water causes a seed to sprout. There's no disputing these facts. And all vegetation is sustained by sweet water, that is rain. So our provision is stored in the sky, that is the rainwater, and this rainwater is sent down by God in measure. Blessed be God, the subtle. He loosed the two oceans, they contend, between them a barrier, they do not transgress. Chapter 55, verses 19 to 20. Now I admit I had much trouble trying to understand what this verse meant for a very, very long time. But now that we understand that the underground water, the sweet water, is contained within the ground, we understand what this verse means, because God has loosed the two oceans, the sweet water, which is within the ground, and the salty water, which is around it. But there is a barrier, the ground, which does not allow them to merge and become one. Interestingly, the word used for barrier is hajar, which also has a meaning of rock. Now let's look at the flood of Noah. We know from the Quran that it is not a local event. He was told to bring a pair of animals, which implies that it was an extinction event. Noah's alleged son drowned even though he climbed a mountain, which begs the question, where did all this water come from and where did it go? The water came down from the sky. The clouds were bypassed at this stage, and the water came up from the underground reservoir, and they both met. So we opened the gates of the sky with water pouring down, and we burst the ground with fountains, so the waters contended for a command already decreed. Chapter 54, verses 11 and 12. And it was said, O ground, swallow thy water, and O sky, desist. And the water receded, and the command concluded, and it settled on Al-Judi. And it was said, away with the wrongdoing people. Chapter 11, verse 44. So in conclusion, the Quran, again, is at odds with the claims of science. We are to take the words of God over the words of men. Therefore, the Quran's statements are the truth and can be verified with our senses, whereas the claims of science are a lie. If you are interested in this video, I suggest you download my short book for free from willyounotreason.com. God willing, until next time, peace and God bless.